few years ago, Pimax was one of those VR companies that was a little bit hard to recommend. Their headsets were overly ambitious, and the overall experience sometimes didn't always live up to expectations. But fast forward to 2026 and something has changed, because suddenly Pimax is being talked about as one of the companies to keep an eye on. And you guys have been begging me to review this little VR headset, the Pimax Dream Air. It's an incredibly light PCVR headset with Micro-OLED displays, and it also includes eye tracking with automatic IPD adjustment. And after using it for the past week, I think this could be my new favorite VR headset. And even has me asking, Steam frame who? But there is one part of the Dream Air experience that stops it from being almost perfect. And unfortunately, it's a pretty important one. So has Pimax knocked it out of the park, or have they fumbled the bag? Now, the Pimax Dream Air has two versions. Well, kind of three, including the cheaper SE model. And it's important to highlight early that this is a PCVR headset. You have to run it with a gaming PC. There's a Lighthouse version of the headset, which means you need existing Vive base stations for and existing controllers to use with it. I have those, but in 2026, I am so sick of base stations. And my Valve Index controllers have issues and I just can't justify buying new ones. So when I saw the Dream Air had a SLAM version, I was very curious. SLAM stands for Simultaneous Localization and Mapping, which is basically a fancy way of saying inside-out tracking, which is the same technology the MetaQuest and Steam Frame uses. One of my favorite things about the Pimax Dream Air is just how incredibly light it is, and after using headsets to feel like you have an elephant on your head, I am so desperate for a light VR headset. Because weight in VR matters a lot to your comfort and how much you want to use it. You could have the highest resolution displays in the world, but if after 40 minutes your head hurts or your cheek hurts, or in my case, my neck hurts, then you're not going to want to use a VR headset long term. And the Dream Air is the complete opposite. Once I had it fitted properly, it felt really comfortable, and I'm pretty happy with the fit. I don't have any real issues with it, but I will say that the build itself doesn't necessarily feel premium as the price might suggest. A lot of that is probably a consequence of trying to make something feel light, but when you compare it to something like the big screen Beyond, this definitely feels like a more premium headset, and the Pimax just kind of felt a bit more plasticky and cheap. But of course, that doesn't matter if the panels are good. But are they? Well, they're pretty stunning. The Dream Air uses Micro-OLED displays, which means you get those really deep blacks that OLED is known for, but with the kind of sharpness you want from a high-end PCVR headset. And if you've used LCD headsets like the Quest and have been able to use OLED displays, you really notice the difference, because LCD headsets look pretty washed out by comparison. And I did literally wow when I jumped into Subside for the first time. It's a stunning game by itself, but when you compare it with some nice OLED displays and a decent gaming PC, it is such a treat to play. I was stoked. And for me, that's what VR is all about. My dream for the future of VR is just more realistic graphics. That's what gets me excited about VR, and the Pimax Dream Air helps deliver on that dream. The lenses are also really great. They use concave pancake lenses, and the clarity across the image is excellent. And that extra field of view feels way more immersive than something like the big screen Beyond. And I think that's an important differentiator, because one of the compromises of these ultra small VR headsets is that while you get a really tiny headset, it also means tiny lenses. So you sacrifice some of that immersion due to the smaller form factor. Whereas a Dream Air doesn't feel particularly claustrophobic or feels like you're sacrificing field of view. You're getting this really small, really light headset, but you're still getting a really impressive visual experience. I had edge-to-edge clarity, no screen door effect. It was great. I loved it. I do love the big screen Beyond, but when you compare it, it does feel a lot more claustrophobic to wear. And the extra field of view of the Dream Air does make a difference, and I didn't realize how much until I tried the Dream Air. I also find sometimes the contrast on the big screen Beyond to be a little too dark, and I found I was losing details in some scenes. Whereas in the Pimax felt a bit more crisp and the color was balanced better. It's maybe slightly more saturated, but I didn't mind it. And honestly, this is where Pimax has absolutely nailed it. These might be some of the best displays I've used in VR. Although, there is one really annoying issue with them. Sadly, I got quite a lot of glare. There was just one big glare spot right in the middle of the left lens, and from what I can tell, a lot of that seems to be coming through the facial interface. The material around the sides is quite breathable, which is nice. It's almost mesh-like, but it also seems to allow a lot of external light into the headset. So depending on the lighting in my room, I can sometimes see reflections that take away from what you're looking at, which is usually beautiful displays. And the frustrating thing is, this feels really fixable. And apparently it is. Pimax have been listening to feedback and are releasing some new facial masks that resolve a lot of the issues. I believe they're shipping it out to existing users, maybe. I think including it in newer models for a certain time. It's a bit unclear, but at least I know there's a solution coming, and it's great Pimax are listening to feedback. But what about common criticisms of Pimax's software and tracking? Now, because this is a Pimax device, you do need to install Pimax's software before you can get it going. And if you're coming from something like a completely standalone headset, there is definitely more setup involved. This is still a PCVR headset. You got to connect it to USB, DisplayPort, and power. Then you've got to install and run Pimax Play on your PC as well. But honestly, the software experience was better than I expected. There are a lot of settings you can adjust, and it gives you quite a bit of control over how you want the headset to behave. You can tweak things depending on whether you want maximum visual quality, better performance, different refresh rates, and so on. And there's even a Steam VR launch button. You can also get access to Pimax Evo, which is a more advanced tool if you prefer that as well. And the eye tracking is kind of useful. There is no manual IPD adjustment on the Pimax Dream Air. The eye tracking determines your IPD and automatically adjusts the lenses to match your eyes. And I found it was able to match my IPD pretty quickly and seamlessly. The eye tracking does also support foveated rendering in supported games. I tested Kayak VR, and at first I did have issues. It wigged out and it made me really nauseous. But after I closed everything and redid it, it did perform quite nicely. So I guess there's potential reliability problems with the eye tracking. And I know people are going to ask, but I could not get eye tracking to work in VR chat. If it's meant to work natively, it definitely didn't do that. I tried some plugins, but couldn't get that working either. I am a complete VR chat noob, so sadly, I'm not the best person to test these features, but from what I could tell, it didn't work natively and wasn't easy to get it going otherwise. I will mention as well, heat was not an issue. On my big screen Beyond 2E, the heat was pretty significant when using the eye tracking on this thing. When you took it off, it felt quite warm, and you could also feel it kind of working. But the Dream Air seemed to run quite cool and quietly. And if I'm completely honest, I've never really used a VR headset that has done eye tracking well, except for maybe the Quest Pro. Rest in peace. But I think if eye tracking is a big appeal for you, I wouldn't rate it super highly, but I think it's nice to have the automatic IPD adjustment and options for foveated rendering. And I have seen some people say they get better performance without it. You can turn it off in settings and then just manually set your IPD in the settings, which is nice. But the eye tracking isn't the real issue with this headset, it's something way more important. Because at this point, the Dream Air has kind of been crushing it. It's ridiculously light, the displays are beautiful, and the software is actually pretty decent. And it's pretty much everything I've been wanting in a small PCVR headset. But remember earlier when I said I specifically chose the SLAM version because I'm completely done with base stations? Well, the tracking on the Dream Air is probably the worst tracking I've used on a VR headset in a pretty long time. And that's so frustrating because almost everything else about this headset is so good. The biggest issues I've had is consistency. Sometimes it's fine. Other times the headset seems to lose its understanding of where I am in the room and have me sticking through the floor. I've had situations where I've taken off the headset, went to get a drink, and then put the headset back on, and suddenly the entire play space has recalibrated, which gets pretty annoying. I did eventually learn quick ways to easily recalibrate, but not ideal. And then there's the controller tracking. I tested Beat Saber, of course, and it was technically playable, but playable and good good are two very different things. I could get through songs, but I was seeing enough mistracking and inconsistency that it became frustrating, especially faster sections where you really need the controllers to keep up with you. Now, there is a potential that Pimax could improve the tracking through software and firmware updates, but I've got to review what's in front of me right now. And right now, the tracking needs work. And this is where the Dream Air goes from being one of my favorite PCVR headsets to being a headset I kind of have to make excuses for, because normally I'd tell you this was a deal breaker. Tracking is fundamental to VR, but to be honest, I'm almost willing to put up with it. This probably sounds ridiculous, but the confidence displays are good enough that I would consider tolerating weaker tracking to keep using it. I definitely wouldn't recommend it if you play Beat Saber quite seriously or any FPS games where tracking is going to matter, but if you value graphical fidelity and don't care for perfect tracking, then it can be suitable. Like if I'm just chilling out to play a story-based game, this is definitely the headset I want to use. That's how much I like the rest of it. But I also really hope Pimax can improve it, because if they can get the inside-out tracking to the point where I'm no longer thinking about it, this gets dangerously close to being the PCVR headset I've been waiting for. But is there something better? Because if you are looking at the Pimax Dream Air, you're probably looking at other VR headsets as well. And if you're looking at something this expensive, there are two other headsets that probably come to mind: the Big Screen Beyond and Steam Frame, which isn't out yet. And interestingly, I think they highlight two completely different things that make the Dream Air appealing. If your priority is making PCVR as small as possible and as light as possible, Big Screen Beyond is probably the obvious comparison. And I still love the Big Screen Beyond, and I love what they did with the headset. It's proved that VR headsets don't need to be these massive bricks hanging off the front of your face, but there are always compromises. For this to work, you need lighthouse base stations, you need separate controllers, and while the Beyond display and lenses are incredible, the field of view is a little restrictive. Whereas the Dream Air feels like a more complete version of that idea. It's still incredibly light, you still get those beautiful Micro-OLED displays, but the field of view feels more open, and you also get automatic IPD adjustment. Whereas with this model, you gotta use a tool to adjust the IPD, which can be a bit fiddly if you're sharing it around. And of course, with this model, if you get the SLAM version, you don't need base stations at all. But funnily enough, after everything I've just said about tracking, maybe the Lighthouse version isn't such a bad thing. Dream Air is trying to give you a lightweight PCVR experience without all the external hardware. And personally, I love that idea. But Pimax just need to get the tracking right. And then there's the Steam Frame. And that's where it gets a bit interesting, because I don't think Valve and Pimax are actually trying to build the same headset. Dream Air is trying to be a high-end PCVR headset, whereas Steam Frame is trying to be a hybrid. They're trying to be a PCVR and standalone headset, which has its pros and cons. The Steam Frame is wireless, has a more integrated ecosystem and standalone capability, but it's also got an LCD panel. And while wireless is great, it's always going to sacrifice graphical quality, no matter how good the foveated streaming is. And ultimately, we need to talk about cost. And when you compare it to the Big Screen Beyond 2, it's $1,019 USD for the base model, but you still need external base stations and controllers, which can push up the costs. Whereas the Pimax Dream Air SLAM version is $2,300. Oof, that's a lot of money. That's like 3,300 Australian dollars. And I don't get to keep this VR headset. I have to send it back. So it has me asking, am I going to buy one? And I have to admit, I do prefer it over the Big Screen Beyond 2. And I am tempted to buy one, but I just really hope they can sort out the tracking issues. And then there's the Pimax Dream Air SE version, which is a lot cheaper at only $899, which has a lower resolution, different panels, and slightly different lenses, but still keeps the eye tracking. And comparing the prices has me very curious about the cheaper model. So let me know if you guys want a review on that one, because I'm quite interested now. But something I think is important to bring up is that Pimax seem like a company that are working really hard to make a great product. They've told me that they've improved a lot of the issues that people complained about in the past, especially about customer support and software, and they seem to be really active in providing info and updates to their community. And I think that's a great thing about these smaller hardware companies. They have the ability to listen and easily iterate new changes, whereas with something like Meta, it can be a bit too bad, too sad. So I'm really excited by Pimax's future, and I think they're so close to making the perfect VR headset and being a real competitor in the space, especially since HTC's just kind of disappeared. But to wrap it up, I feel kind of conflicted about the Pimax Dream Air. There's just so much to love about it, but there's also some really frustrating tracking issues. I want to recommend it for the amazing display, amazing lenses, and also the comfort, but it needs to come with a big warning about the tracking. And I think if you were buying the Lighthouse version, it is a safer bet, but for double the price of the big screen beyond, are you gaining double the value? I'm not too sure about that. But come join my Discord if you'd like to chat more about this review, and also subscribe because it tells the algorithm to bring you back to the channel. And hopefully for the Steam Frame review one day now. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. And also a shout out to channel members for supporting the channel.